Grandma Eleanor, the formidable matriarch of the Carter family empire, returned from a 3-month retreat with a secret plan. She had spent her time meditating on the future of her grandson, Daniel Carter. Though he was destined to inherit the family's vast business empire, Daniel was an enigma, brilliant, charismatic, yet utterly elusive. Unlike the usual heirs who flaunted their power, Daniel preferred working behind the scenes, running operations from the shadows. His face was rarely seen, his presence more of a whispered legend among employees than a known fact. He had spent years building his skills, not in corporate boardrooms but out in the field, working in disguise under different roles in the company. He wanted to understand every layer of the empire he was set to inherit. Inside the company, whispers spread like wildfire. They say he's a genius, an executive assistant mammoth. He's pulled off multi-million-dollar deals before rivals even realize what's happening. And impossible to track down, another added. Rumor has it he never even steps into headquarters. But Eleanor knew better. She had raised him, knew his strengths and his flaws. And she knew one thing for sure, he needed someone who would love him not for his wealth or power, but for the man he truly was. To find this person, Eleanor hatched a daring scheme. Disguising herself as a temp assistant in the company, she planned to observe, unnoticed. She wanted to see the true character of the employees and, more importantly, find a suitable partner for Daniel. On her first day, she encountered Olivia, a determined, sharp-witted young analyst with no patience for office drama. Olivia was passionate about ethical business practices, often speaking out against shady deals others ignored. Unlike her peers, who gossiped about status and wealth, Olivia focused on making a real difference. Eleanor was impressed. She also noticed that Olivia wasn't exactly popular among some of her colleagues. One particular rival, Jessica, had made it her mission to discredit Olivia at every turn. Honestly, Olivia, Jessica sneered one day, you work yourself to death for ethical causes that won't make you a dime. Do you enjoy being a martyr? I enjoy doing what's right, Olivia shot back. Maybe you should try it sometime. Eleanor hid a smirk as she listened. Olivia had spirit, exactly what Daniel needed. Later that evening, Eleanor made her move. She approached Olivia in the break room, pretending to be just another office temp. You're quite passionate about your work, aren't you, dear? She asked, feigning casual interest. Olivia smiled. I suppose I am. I just believe business should be about more than just money. That's rare these days, Eleanor mused. Tell me, would you ever consider dating someone unconventional? Olivia laughed. At this point. Only if he's not a liar, a cheat, or obsessed with money. That narrows the dating pool considerably. Eleanor chuckled, her mind racing. Olivia was perfect. The next morning, a new intern arrived at the company. He was sharp, observant, and carried himself with quiet confidence. Hi, I'm Daniel, he introduced himself to Olivia. She extended her hand. Olivia. Welcome to the company. Little did she know, she had just shaken hands with the heir she unknowingly vowed never to date. Daniel, for the first time in years, felt a thrill of uncertainty. He had built billion-dollar deals in secret, but could he pull off the greatest challenge yet, winning Olivia's heart while keeping his identity a secret? Eleanor watched from afar, a knowing smile on her face. The game had begun. Days passed, and Eleanor continued her undercover mission, but she soon realized she had her own battles to fight. Jessica, ever the scheming opportunist, had taken a special interest in making Eleanor's life miserable. Ugh, Eleanor, you missed a spot on the counter, Jessica snapped one afternoon, tossing a napkin at her. If you're going to be a temp here, at least act like you belong. Eleanor bit her tongue. She had seen arrogance before, but Jessica was in a league of her own. Apologies, dear, Eleanor said sweetly, knowing full well she had done nothing wrong. Jessica crossed her arms. I don't understand why the company even hires people like you. No ambition, no drive. Just in the way. Eleanor met her gaze with an icy calm. And yet, here I am, managing just fine. Perhaps you should focus less on me and more on your own work. Jessica scoffed and stormed off, leaving Eleanor shaking her head. If Jessica treated a supposed temp like this, what else was she capable of? Later, as Eleanor prepared coffee in the break room, she overheard Jessica whispering to another employee. The old lady is useless. I might just tell HR to replace her. Be careful, the other woman cautioned. She may be old, but she's sharp. Jessica laughed. Please, what can she do? She's probably one bad review away from being kicked out. Eleanor clenched her fist. She had lived long enough to deal with people like Jessica, but she wouldn't let the girl ruin a workplace that Daniel would one day inherit. That evening, Olivia found Eleanor sitting alone in the break room. You look troubled, Olivia observed. Eleanor sighed. Just some workplace politics. Nothing I haven't seen before. Olivia frowned. Jessica's been on a power trip lately. She's cruel to anyone she sees as beneath her. You shouldn't have to put up with it. Eleanor smiled. And yet, here we both are, pushing forward regardless. Olivia hesitated before saying, You remind me of someone. My grandmother. She had this quiet strength about her. Never let anyone push her around. Eleanor's heart warmed. She sounds like a remarkable woman. She was, Olivia said softly. And something tells me you are too. Eleanor patted Olivia's hand. Thank you, dear. Now, tell me, what do you think of the new intern? Olivia laughed. Daniel. He's different. Smart, but mysterious. I can't quite figure him out yet. Eleanor chuckled to herself. Well, sometimes the best things take time to reveal themselves. As Olivia left, Eleanor's mind whirred. Jessica needed to be dealt with. And Daniel. Well, his challenge was only just beginning. As Daniel and Olivia walked toward the coffee shop, the air was crisp, and the city bustled around them. They had just left the office building behind, and it felt like the perfect escape from the corporate chaos. Daniel glanced at Olivia, his thoughts racing. He hadn't expected her to agree to meet for coffee, and now, as they walked side by side, he felt a growing sense of anticipation. I have to ask, Daniel said, his voice casual but laced with curiosity. Are you seeing anyone right now? Olivia paused for a moment, her expression unreadable, before she shook her head slightly. No, she said, the word coming out almost like a sigh of relief. I just ended things with someone. Daniel's eyebrows raised. Oh. Sorry to hear that. It's okay, Olivia replied with a faint smile, her eyes avoiding his for a brief second. It was time. He wasn't the kind of person I thought he was. Daniel was intrigued. What do you mean? Olivia's gaze softened as she spoke, her voice steady but with an edge of sadness. He always looked down on me, like I was never enough. He thought he was superior because of his job and the people he knew. I spent too long trying to make it work, but in the end, I realized he didn't respect me. Not the way a relationship should work. Daniel's heart ached at her words. He couldn't understand why anyone would treat her like that. She was intelligent, driven, and capable. He wanted to say something to comfort her, but instead, he just nodded, listening intently. I think it's important, Olivia continued, her voice growing stronger, to be with someone who values you for who you are, not just what you bring to the table. A person should respect you, not look down on you because of what you do or how much money you make. It's not about status or power. Daniel couldn't help but feel a sense of admiration for her. She was so candid, so unapologetic about her beliefs. It was rare, especially in a world where people often pretended to be something they weren't. You're absolutely right, he said, his voice sincere. It's about respect. And honestly, anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve your time. Olivia smiled at him, a grateful warmth in her eyes. Thanks, Daniel. That means a lot. The two of them reached the coffee shop, and they paused outside, standing on the steps for a moment. Daniel held the door open for her, and she walked inside, the warm aroma of freshly brewed coffee filling the air. I'm glad we're doing this, Daniel said, still caught up in their conversation. Olivia looked back at him with a playful glint in her eye. Yeah, me too. I haven't had a conversation like this in a while. As they waited in line, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that this was the start of something real, something he hadn't expected but was certainly willing to explore. For the first time in a long while, he found himself hoping for more than just business deals or boardroom power. He found himself hoping for Olivia. As the days passed, Daniel and Olivia found themselves drawn to each other in ways neither had expected. It started subtly, casual conversations in the office kitchen, stolen glances when they thought no one was looking, and shared moments of laughter over coffee breaks. But the connection they shared deepened with every passing interaction, like a quiet current growing stronger beneath the surface. One evening after work, Daniel texted Olivia, asking if she wanted to grab dinner. She hesitated for a moment, but something about his message made her heart flutter. She had always been cautious about mixing work and personal life, but with Daniel, it felt different. She responded, her fingers tapping out a simple reply, "Sure, I'd love that." They met at a small, cozy restaurant near the office. The dim lighting and soft music created an intimate atmosphere. As they sat across from each other, Daniel's gaze lingered on Olivia, noticing how her eyes sparkled when she talked about her passions, about business, about life. He was captivated by her intelligence, her wit, and the ease with which she made him feel like he could be himself. For the first time, he wasn't pretending to be someone else. He wasn't the heir to the empire. He was just Daniel, enjoying the company of someone who didn't care about his last name or his wealth. "So, tell me something about yourself that I wouldn't expect," Olivia said, leaning forward with a playful smile. "You know, something that's not business related." Daniel thought for a moment, his eyes narrowing as he considered her question. "Well," he said slowly, "I guess I've always been a bit of a history buff. I love reading about ancient civilizations and how they shaped the world we live in today." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Really? You don't strike me as the type to be into history." "I guess I'm full of surprises," Daniel replied with a grin. "What about you? What's something I wouldn't expect?" Olivia took a sip of her wine, then smiled. "I used to be a competitive swimmer. I'm pretty good, too. I've won a few state-level medals." Daniel's eyes widened. "I didn't know that about you. That's impressive." They laughed, the conversation flowing effortlessly between them. The more they talked, the more they realized how much they had in common. They both cared deeply about ethics and integrity, but they also had a playful side. They both liked quiet nights in but also enjoyed spontaneous adventures. It was easy, so easy to be with her. Daniel felt like he could talk to Olivia about anything, and that was something he hadn't felt in a long time. As the weeks went by, their relationship blossomed. Daniel found himself looking forward to every moment he could spend with Olivia. Whether it was a late-night conversation after work or a weekend hike, he cherished the time they shared. Olivia, too, was falling for him harder than she ever anticipated. She appreciated the way Daniel listened to her, how he treated her with respect, and how he made her feel like she was the most important person in the room. He never judged her, never made her feel small. One evening, as they sat on a park bench, watching the sunset together, Daniel turned to Olivia, his heart pounding in his chest. "I know we've only been seeing each other for a short time," he began, his voice soft yet filled with sincerity. "But I feel something real with you. And I think you feel it too. Olivia met his gaze, her heart racing. I do. I feel it too, Daniel. Without another word, Daniel took her hand in his, the connection between them undeniable. As the sun dipped below the horizon, they shared a tender kiss, the beginning of something new, something genuine, unfolding between them. In the weeks that followed, their bond only grew stronger. The connection that started with coffee breaks and casual conversations had blossomed into a love neither of them had anticipated but both were now certain of. They were no longer just two people in the same office. They were partners, allies in a world that often felt like it was working against them. And for the first time, Daniel felt like he had found someone who truly saw him, not as the heir to an empire, but as the man he truly was. And Olivia had found someone who respected her, cherished her, and made her feel like she was exactly who she was meant to be. Together, they had built something neither of them had expected, but something that was, without a doubt, worth every moment. The boardroom buzzed with anticipation. The high-level meeting was in full swing as Daniel sat at the back of the room, observing, unnoticed by most of the executives and staff members. His casual appearance, an unassuming grey blazer, black jeans, and a crisp white shirt, made it easy for him to blend into the background. As the meeting progressed, the discussion centered on company performance, growth strategies, and upcoming investments. Olivia sat at the table with the rest of the analysts, her focus sharp as she took notes and offered her insights. Daniel had been quietly watching her for the past few minutes. Her intelligence, her confidence, it made him feel even more certain about his decision to reveal the truth to her today. He had planned this moment for weeks, going over every possible scenario in his mind, but now that the time had come, his heart raced. The secrecy he'd maintained for so long had been a necessity, but it weighed heavily on him. As much as he cared about her, he couldn't keep living a lie. It was now or never. As the CEO wrapped up his points on the agenda, Daniel stood, his presence instantly commanding attention. "Excuse me, everyone," Daniel said, his voice calm yet firm, cutting through the murmurs of surprise. All eyes turned to him. Olivia, who had been glancing at the presentation screen, suddenly froze, sensing something was different. She looked up, her expression curious but unaware of what was coming. "I need to make an announcement," Daniel continued. The room fell silent. "Most of you know me as an intern here," he said, looking directly at Olivia for a brief moment. "But what you don't know is that I'm not just any intern. I'm Daniel Carter, heir to the Carter family business empire." A wave of disbelief rippled through the room. Executives exchanged surprised glances, and whispers erupted like wildfire. Olivia's eyes widened in shock, her heart pounding in her chest. She felt a sudden sense of betrayal, confusion, and anger begin to bubble beneath the surface. "Daniel Carter," she whispered under her breath. He nodded slowly, his gaze never leaving hers. "I didn't want to keep this from you, Olivia," he said, his voice low and sincere. "I wanted to get to know you as the person you are, not as the heir of a family dynasty. But it's time for the truth to come out. I didn't want to be a mystery anymore, especially not to you." The room was still in stunned silence, everyone now turning their attention to Olivia. She swallowed hard, her face unreadable. She wanted to believe him, but the words felt like a betrayal. She had trusted him, let her guard down, and they'd promised no secrets, and now, here he was, the very secret she had unknowingly been keeping from herself. She could feel her chest tighten, the anger beginning to well up inside of her. I don't know what to say," Olivia said quietly, her voice barely audible. Before Daniel could respond, the meeting continued as planned, with people asking him about his role, his intentions, and how he planned to move forward with the company. Olivia barely heard any of it. Her mind was reeling with 1,000 thoughts. She couldn't focus on anything, especially not the overwhelming sense of disappointment growing inside her. The meeting ended a little while later, and the room slowly emptied out. Daniel hung back, wanting to speak to Olivia, but she was already heading toward the door, her back turned to him. "Olivia, wait." Daniel called out, pushing through the crowd of executives. She didn't stop. "Olivia," he tried again, his voice tinged with urgency, but she was already walking faster, her footsteps echoing through the empty hall. When they reached the hallway, she stopped, finally turning to face him. Her expression was hard, her arms crossed in defiance. "Why didn't you tell me?" Olivia asked, her voice quiet but full of hurt. "Why keep something so important from me when we promised no secrets?" Daniel opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. He could see the hurt in her eyes, the raw disappointment in her gaze. He felt like he had failed her, and it hurt in ways he couldn't articulate. "I wanted to tell you," he said, his voice shaky. "I really did, but I wasn't sure if you'd still see me as just Daniel. I didn't want to be another name in the tabloids. I didn't want to be the guy people only notice because of who my family is." Olivia took a deep breath, her jaw tightening. "You should have trusted me, Daniel. If you truly cared about me, you wouldn't have kept this from me. It doesn't matter if you're the heir to the empire or a janitor. What matters is that you were dishonest with me, and that hurts." He wanted to reach out to her, to explain that he hadn't meant to hurt her. But she had already turned away, her heels clicking sharply against the floor as she walked briskly down the corridor, leaving him standing there, staring after her. Daniel watched her disappear, a knot forming in his stomach. He felt the weight of his mistake. He had been so focused on his own fear of rejection that he hadn't stopped to consider how it would feel for Olivia, how it would feel to be lied to. As the door closed behind her, Daniel sank into a chair, his head in his hands. Olivia didn't go back to her desk. Her mind was a whirlwind of emotions: anger, confusion, betrayal. She needed someone to talk to, someone who wouldn't judge her for feeling the way she did. She thought of Grandma Eleanor. She always knew how to calm her down, how to put things in perspective. They had spent so many afternoons together in the little corner cafe, where Eleanor would sip her tea and listen to Olivia's rants, offering quiet wisdom in return. Without thinking, Olivia grabbed her coat and headed for the cafe, hoping to find the one person who could help her make sense of all this. But when she arrived, the cafe was empty. The familiar corner seat where Eleanor always sat was unoccupied, and there was no sign of her anywhere. Olivia's heart sank. She stood there for a moment, staring at the empty chair, feeling the weight of her frustration settle over her. Where could Grandma Eleanor be? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of her phone buzzing in her pocket. It was a text from Daniel. But Olivia didn't feel like reading it. Not now. Not when everything was still so raw. With a heavy heart, she turned and walked out of the cafe, unsure of where she was heading next, but knowing she couldn't stay there. Not yet.